Our next speaker is Dr. Catrina Luchsinger Gähwiler. She is a partner at the law firm MLL, and she will talk about opportunities in DeFi and staking for banks. Thank you very much. The stage is yours.
Good evening, everybody. I think, first of all, I'd like to start off and say that 21 Shares did a great job in bringing structured products in a bankable form, or bringing cryptocurrencies wrapped up in a bankable form to the markets. Meanwhile, a lot of people have adopted these ideas. There are great products out there, both tracking cryptocurrencies, but also with hedging strategies. So I think that is obviously one way of visiting cryptocurrencies and investing into cryptocurrencies. I'd like to take it a step further and talk about decentralized finance. So I've noticed a lot of you have invested into cryptocurrencies. The question is, do you just want to hold them in your wallet, or do you want to do more with it? And that is what decentralized finance is about. I'll be talking about liquidity pools, lending pools, and staking. Let's start off with the liquidity pools. How does a liquidity pool work? Any of us can start a liquidity pool. It is basically putting it into the fiat world. I put 100 Swiss francs and 100 euros on the table. The next guy says, good idea, I add another 100 Swiss francs, 100 euros. Those are the liquidity providers. Next person says, oh, I have to go to Germany tomorrow, I need euros. Put some Swiss francs on the table, take some euros out. That, in very short words, is a liquidity pool. It is, in my view, a great idea. It is peer-to-peer. So you can join in, you can earn by just putting your money in. Obviously, you have a certain risk because the pool will change over time. Once the guy has taken out the euros for his Germany trip, we'll have more Swiss francs in the pool than euros. So that is, in a very simple word, what liquidity pools are about. The larger liquidity pools have fun names like Uniswap, PancakeSwap, SushiSwap, HoneySwap, and the like. I'd like to show you, sort of give you a feeling for the size of these markets. We have on Uniswap, we have a total of 4.43 billion locked up, US dollars locked up in these different pools. That was as of the weekend. The daily rate or the daily exchange on that, on those pools was 1.26 billion. So we're not talking about some few nerds who are doing something. This is serious money which is changing hands every day. If we look at the different pools, you can see here what kind of pools there are. There is USDC versus Ether, USDC versus Ether. There were two different people putting up the same pools. WBTC versus Ether, DAI versus USDC. USDC is a stable coin pegged to the US dollar. You have USDC versus USDT, so there are two stable coins going against each other. So you have a number of different pools which you can use if you want to move from one currency class to another one. You can also see the total values of 402 million, 350 million, 305 million. So again, these pools are large. There is a lot of money in it. Actually, exchanging is not really difficult. Even if you go into smaller currencies, you will notice that you can exchange quite foreign and sort of other altcoins you can exchange in these pools. If we choose the largest one, USDC versus Ether, you have the entire details, as you always have in blockchain. You can see the individual transactions. You can see how much has gone in, how much has gone out, and you can see the individual volumes. On the right-hand side up there, you can also see your choices. Do you want to add liquidity? Do you want to trade? So it is also made very simple, even for people who are not very much into crypto, to really participate in these pools. Now, at the end of the day, I'm a lawyer, so nothing comes without risk warnings. But let's first talk about the returns. If you look at the Uniswap DAI Ether returns, these are slightly older figures. I couldn't find the most recent figures. You can sort of see where the returns are. They're not low, they are quite volatile, that has to be said, but there is quite a lot of interest to be earned if you provide liquidity into different pools. Obviously, the more seldom the pools are, the more you can earn. The more everyday the pools are, the less you can earn. That is risk return. Let's look at the risks. When you act as liquidity provider, you define a range within which you are prepared to offer your liquidity. And it can be that in adverse markets you fall out of the range and then are suspended as a liquidity provider. During that time, you also don't earn anything. Risks related to liquidity pools are typically lack of liquidity, but also scam pools. I am on the board of Ripple, and I was looking through the Uniswap pool, and I came across a classic XRP, something which I had not really known of. I am not sure whether it exists. Maybe there is something like it, but it was a very small pool, and it might be a scam because people were looking for XRP. So you do find that. You have to have a certain understanding of the coins and know exactly what you're looking for. The other thing is, and that's where I think sort of come to the question, why should banks look into this? Participating as a liquidity provider in a pool, in Switzerland at least, is acting as a money exchanger. Everyone who participates is constantly exchanging the currencies they have. And this is a financial intermediary activity. FINMA so far has not yet gone after people. It could be also quite difficult. But if one would do it to a larger extent, it certainly would be an AML activity which would be prohibited. Let's look at lending pools. Lending pools are single currency pools. Again, anybody can start a pool by providing the initial liquidity. Let's say I have a lot of Ether, put my Ether in the pool. Additional lenders can put their Ether in as well. And now I can do two things. I can either leave it in and other people borrow my Ether because they have put Bitcoin in another pool but need Ether. Or I can say, well, I actually want to do a transaction in another currency, DAI or something. I need DAI from another pool. And then what I have lent in acts as collateral for what I'm borrowing. So the borrower must bring collateral. Those can be stable coins, tokens of the lending pool, or other currencies. The larger lending pools are Aave, which has its origin in Switzerland, Maker, Compound, or DYDX. Now, if we look at Aave, for example, we have $20 billion of liquidity locked in Aave at the point when I did this screenshot, which again was over the weekend. That just gives you again a feeling of the volume which is in these decentralized finance activities. If we look at the interest paid out, it is paid out every 10 to 20 seconds, slightly quicker than what the bank does. The interest rates do not look very appealing. That is because the main risk is not carried by the people who are lending. The main risk is carried by the people who stake on these DeFi pools. We'll get to that later on. But still, I can get interest rates which I'm not getting for my Swiss francs on my bank account when they lie around. What are the risks? Obviously, the collateral is subject to margins. There is a risk of the collateral being volatile and you getting margin calls. The collateral rules have to be understood. That's quite important. How is the collateral actually liquidated? Because it's a smart contract, these are standardized rules. So you have to, there's not a banker you can talk to. It will just happen if you hit the margins, okay? And the technical capabilities of the platform are important because at the end of the day, again, it is a smart contract and whatever happens is automated. If there is a technical glitch and you're hit by it, it just will happen. So that is about staking. If you're interested in the sort of risk matrices behind the lending, look onto Aave. If you look at their whole risk manual, which they have online, you can see how they value every individual currency, how they have this risk matrix behind it, which determines the margin. It is modern banking. It is exactly what bankers do. It is just automated. That is the big difference. Let's look at staking. Staking is basically a deposit of assets against the receipt of fees for deposit. It is what I in German have my Sichteinlage with the bank. The reason for the deposit can vary significantly because you find staking both on first layer, second layer blockchains, but also in decentralized applications. And the risk associated with the staking will be determined by the use in the staking. Typical staking blockchains, first layer blockchains are Cardano, again, something which is domiciled in Switzerland, Solana, the Ethereum 2.0, and Polkadot, to mention some of the best known. But there are many, many more blockchains which work on staking. Staking came up as proof of stake versus proof of work. It was one of the answers to the energy consumption of the proof of work, which we briefly touched upon when we discussed Bitcoin. The person, the validator, basically helps create the validation of the transactions and then for that gets his reward. So if a validator holds 5% of the total tokens staked, he will be validating approximately 5% of the entire new blocks and will be receiving approximately 5% of the fees for that transaction. Now, some blockchains allow anyone to become a validator on the network. Some blockchains have quite clear technical requirements so that people can be stakers. And that is why there is a possibility to also stake if you don't have these technical capabilities. And that is if you use custodial wallets. So non-custodial wallets is when I do it myself with my wallet. A custodial wallet is if I hand over my tokens to someone else and they basically do the staking for me. The difference is obviously that I have a counterparty risk on the person who holds my custodial wallet. And they have, under certain circumstances, regulatory issues which they have to look into because they hold collective assets, depending on their jurisdictions. We have a similar mechanism also in DeFi projects. There it's sometimes called farming or also staking. So you can, for example, stake with Aave tokens on the Aave protocol. However, the stakers are getting the money because they will also carry the losses if a borrower defaults. So anybody who stakes can lose up to 30% of the tokens because their tokens are then used to cover the shortfalls. That is what I meant. You have to know the details, you have to read the small print, the general terms, because every project has its own rewards, but also own risks, obviously. And in the DeFi projects, you have significantly higher regulatory and technology risks because there are many more different DeFi projects. Some of them are very well tested, some of them are quite new, and we don't really know what the scripts are behind those DeFi projects. This is slightly small, but what I wanted to show you here is how easy it is to stake. This is the Binance exchange. Binance is one of the exchanges which offers custodial wallets, where you can basically say, stake now. You can determine the number of days you want to have your tokens locked, and you have the tokens in the wallet and they get used for your staking. They get locked and used for the staking. And then you have the returns, as you can see, somewhere around 12, 16, 25%, depending on the, obviously again, on the risks and the duration you have chosen. What are the risks at staking? Again, we have the underlying cryptocurrency with adverse price movements. If you've locked it in for 120 days, you will just have to watch your tokens evolve in value. There is nothing you can do. So there you have the volatility. The question is also, when are the staking awards paid? Are they paid daily? Are they paid every hour? There are different mechanisms behind the different staking options. Slashing for dishonesty or for malicious behavior is something which has to be taken into account if you run your own node. I think that is something which maybe many think is still too far-fetched, but a validator node basically has to run always. If you have a power shortage and your node falls out, you can be punished for that. Running own validator nodes incurs costs. I did that for quite some time on Ethereum. I think I definitely spent much, much more than I earned during that time. And using third-party validator nodes through custodial wallets, as I said, incurs counterparty risks. Now, why should banks be interested in this? I think basically banks would be ideally set to, on the one hand, act as gatekeepers for the technology, for the due diligence which is required, for the quality, but at the same time allow the whitelisted users, their bank customers, a peer-to-peer transacting exactly like we can do on DeFi. But I'm sure not everybody wants to go on DeFi, so why do the banks not basically replicate what we're seeing out there, get a margin for it, no doubt, but allow this peer-to-peer to happen in parallel. Otherwise, I think what will happen is exactly what was described beforehand. People will look for new ways to do it themselves. People want to do it themselves. I think the younger generations want to be empowered, and at the moment see the banks as showstoppers of getting there. I think it allows diversity. We heard it in the previous discussion. It's not all about crypto, but it's also not all about fiat. Banks can offer both. I think one of the things I personally see is try and do your tax declaration at the end of the year if you've been trading crypto. It's more or less impossible. You have to keep track of every transaction, or the tax authority will miss out. I'm too much of a lawyer. I have a bad conscience if I have a feeling that I'm doing something wrong. So this is one of the big reasons to go central and have someone really track what is happening through their IT. Bank process must reflect decentralization on the product side. I am absolutely certain of that. I think banks have to move, and that's why the title of this slide is also only the wisest and stupidest of men can never change. Unfortunately, I'm neither, so I adopted to change. I hope the Swiss banks will do it as well. It's a huge chance. Thank you very much.